The unvaccinated overcrowd our hospitals, are overrunning emergency rooms and intensive care units, leaving no room for someone with a heart attack or pancreatitis or cancer.
That's why President Biden says he's mandating vaccines for millions of Americans, how it'll work, and what the city of Columbus is doing when it comes to masks. If someone is hurt on a ride, you might expect it to be reported to regulators, but 10 Investigates has uncovered that might not always happen. We take one family's questions to the state.
And after watching those towers collapse from the 10 TV newsroom, I, along with a photographer, jumped into a news car and drove more than 9 hours to get to New York City, where we spent the next 4 days reporting on that disaster.
This weekend marks 20 years since September 11th. We'll hear from former 10 TV anchor Jerry Revish about his time in New York City. Face the State starts now. This week, as cases of COVID go up, government is cracking down. President Biden is requiring the shot for millions of Americans, or they'll face weekly testing. And Columbus Mayor Andrew Ginther is requiring masks indoors, whether you're vaccinated or not. Thank you so much for joining us for Face the State. I'm Tracy Townsend. Here in Columbus, businesses will be responsible for enforcing the mask mandate. 10 TV's Gabriela Garcia looked into how it will work.
It'll be complaint-driven.
Businesses already struggling to catch up from last year are concerned for what the order will mean for their staff.
It's a lot of pressure to put on a small business like ours, and we don't have the support of the state or even the city to enforce this.
You are asking us to enforce a law that we all know is going to be impossible to strictly comply with.
Edward Hasty says he sees the writing on the wall.
There's tens of thousands just in Central Ohio, men and women, whose livelihood is going to be affected, and they're going to be asked to do things that normal citizens are not asked to do. They're going to be asked to basically be the police.
On Wednesday, the city said since they, not the health department, would issue the order, Senate Bill 22 wouldn't be an issue. But Hasty says he feels that's not really the case.
Make no bones about it. This is a health order at the behest of the public health people. They're going to be the ones enforcing it. They explicitly said the police are not going to be enforcing it. And we'll look at what all that means as far as the legality of it all.
Hasty also says depending on what specifics he'll see in the order on Friday, he and his clients may look into legal action against the city. Until then, businesses are hoping for the best for their customers on a weekend that's likely to be very busy. In Columbus,
we're going to take it seriously, but at the end of the day, without the government to help back us up and enforce this, there's only so much we can do.
Gabriela Garcia, 10 TV News.
Indoor mask mandates in Bexley and Whitehall also took effect. As for President Biden requiring the COVID-19 vaccine, reaction has been pouring in. Ohio Chamber of Commerce President Steve Stivers says, quote, whether it is the federal government or the Ohio legislature, one-size-fits-all government mandates limiting employer rights are not the right approach. U.S. Senator Sherrod Brown says in addition to the health concerns of the pandemic, there are mounting economic concerns. The Senate is out of session, and we were able to get some time on the senator's calendar for this one-on-one interview a few days ago. It was a wide-ranging interview. We talked about COVID, the Senate filibuster, the evictions moratorium, and infrastructure.
But I'm mostly looking at potential infrastructure projects, what it means. In Columbus, we know, we can see right here almost the I-7170 interchange, and it's one of the most dangerous places still in Ohio, the 3rd Street and 4th Street bridges, and Front Street, all the things, the major infrastructure that has decayed over the last 25 years, and president after president says they'll fix it, and Joe Biden's the first one doing it.
And so what do you want to say to the folks in the House about moving this along?
Well, they need to move on this infrastructure bill. The Senate needs to move on, and both houses need to move on extending the child tax credit, on investing in health care and education. We're doing things, this is an opportunity to do big things that this country's needed for a long time.
And this is perhaps a rare moment of bipartisan agreement in our country. Ohio's Republican Senator Rob Portman helped craft this legislation. The U.S. Department of Justice is going to investigate the Columbus Division of Police. It comes after a request from Mayor Andrew Ginther. Police Chief Elaine Bryant worked with the DOJ when she was in Detroit, and she says she welcomes them here. She says CPD has to be open to the possibility it doesn't have all the answers. Here's Lacey Crisp.
This is a good day for the Columbus Division of Police. That's because it's a day of opportunity. Opportunity for us to grow, build, and improve.
After months of waiting for an answer, the Department of Justice has told Columbus Mayor Andrew Ginther it will review the Columbus Division of Police through their COPS, or Community-Oriented Policing Services Office.
This is not about one particular officer, policy, or incident. Rather, this is about reforming the entire institution of policing.
Ginther and City Attorney Zach Klein wrote to the DOJ asking for a complete review of the division patterns and policies, particularly when it comes to racial bias. Mayor Ginther explained today he asked for the DOJ to either or both review or place the Columbus Division of Police under a consent decree.
This proactive posture, which is different than a consent decree or formal patterns or practice investigation, does not include litigation at this point.
The Fraternal Order of Police sent a statement saying, in part, we are confident in the leadership of Chief Bryant in that she will protect the integrity of the department and maintain the level of services that the officers and the public deserve. Police Chief Elaine Bryant will guide the COPS office in what areas to review.
There's been areas identified where there is room for improvement and for growth. These include use of force, training, de-escalation, recruiting, diversity, bias-based policing, and early warning system for officers in need of support.
When in Detroit, Bryant worked with the DOJ monitors to make sure that department met all expectations under a consent decree.
So I guess having that experience, how do you feel about the DOJ coming in to review your brand new department?
Well, I will tell you, just in the short time that I've been here, I welcome them coming in and looking into our department. I think that there are some areas where they can absolutely assist us in being able to improve. A big one, again, is the technology, looking at some of our training.
Lacey Crisp, 10 TV News.
4 years ago, an 18-year-old fell off of a ride at the Ohio State Fair and died. 2 years later, Tyler's Law was signed, increasing safety checks for rides at state fairs and carnivals. The goal? Putting a stop to tragedies, but now there are new questions about state law. One family says their 4-year-old daughter almost died on a ride at a Labor Day event. For 10 Investigates, here's Brian Somerville.
Cell phone video taken this past Sunday at Zucchini Fest in Obetz shows children on a kiddie ride. We want to focus your attention on 4-year-old Faith on the right. Her 5-year-old cousin Dylan sits beside her. Then in just mere seconds, everything changes. We're pausing the video right here as it is difficult to see.
Oh my God! I got hit her!
A frantic cry for help from Faith's aunt, Brett Cahill. A scream of pain from Faith. After falling from the ride.
It was horrible. It's horrifying watching that all happen.
Faith's parents, Josh and Rosie, they want answers.
You know, we're lucky Faith's with us today. This needs to be taken a lot more seriously.
According to Russell Clements, the Lil Wheel is ran by his company, Triple Treat Shows. The ride is similar to this one, shown on the company's website. According to Brett, Clements came over to help and directed them to the paramedic tent where Faith was looked over and released.
Was it ever offered to her? Was it ever offered to you all for her to go by ambulance?
No, it was never offered. They just said that they felt like she was okay. She was moving her arm.
Clements filled out this incident report saying Faith had fallen about 3 feet and had a bruise and a knot on her right arm. Clements told 10 TV Wednesday the ride was inspected prior to anyone riding it Sunday, and following the incident, it was checked again.
He's pulling on the bar and he couldn't get it to move, and he was 205 pounds. And, it wasn't moving with him jerking on it.
Clements says he could not find or recreate the same failure concerning the lap bar coming unlatched. The operator, he says, has been with his company all season for the last few months.
I asked him if my daughter was able to reach around to unlatch the bar by herself, and he said no, and he showed me where it was, and yeah, there's no way my daughter could have reached.
The Cahills say an hour later they took Faith to an urgent care where, again, it was nothing more than cuts and bruises and a swollen arm. 2 days later, they say Faith wasn't acting like herself. Another doctor's visit revealed she had broken her collarbone. The Cahills are upset knowing this incident was never reported to the Ohio Department of Agriculture.
The man who owned the ride never sent a report, but he never had to send a report.
Back in June, we told you about Tyler's Law and how this new state law changed safety measures and standards for amusement rides in partnership with the Ohio Department of Agriculture after Tyler Jarrell died in 2017 while riding a ride at the state fair that broke apart.
We thought there was no loopholes with anything. I mean, we thought this new law, things had to be reported. And it looks like it doesn't.
The accident report form on ODA's website, which was in place before Tyler's Law, defines an accident as happening during the operation of a ride which results in death or an injury requiring hospital admission. Because Faith was never admitted, it was never reported.
The medical evidence is there, whether she went by squad or went after by us taking her. Like, had we known what the protocols were, we would have followed them. But us being the general public, we don't know the laws around this.
ODA confirms it is talking with Faith's family, and it is investigating to see if the ride was operated safely and properly. It also says the Lil Wheel passed its inspection prior to the Zucchini Fest and is properly permitted. The Cahills say the ride was operating no more than 30 minutes after this incident.
And I looked back, and the ride was started back up. They were loading kids on it.
The Cahills say more needs to be done for all incidents to be reported for the safety and well-being of all Ohioans.
She's lucky to be here. If anybody sees the video, you can see she's lucky to be here.
Bryant Somerville, 10 TV News.
Russell Clements, the owner of Triple Treat Shows, says the first he heard of the extent of Faith's injuries was when 10 TV contacted him. He says had he known, he would have contacted the Ohio Department of Agriculture immediately. The idea of work has changed over the past year. With Labor Day just a few days ago, we wanted to look at the workforce as a whole and what's being done to fill jobs.
I think we all can remember just the days that followed, unity and strength of purpose and heart that people were exhibiting to total strangers, no matter where you were.
A moment of reflection from former 10 TV anchor Jerry Revish, what he remembers about arriving in Manhattan on September 11th, 2001. Labor Day took on a new meaning this past week. The idea of work has changed, and employers are hopeful more people will get back into the workforce. Federal pandemic unemployment assistance programs expired, affecting millions across the country. According to a new report on job trends in Ohio, there are still some pandemic-related challenges. 10 TV's Lindsay Mills takes a look at where the workforce goes from here.
Now hiring signs just about everywhere you look. Here in Central Ohio, from the Columbus Zoo to Coda, all different industries are seeing the need. Anthony Sabo is the Vice President of Water Park Operations and Guest Services at the zoo.
One great thing about both of our properties this year is we have made some adjustments to our pay rates like so many other businesses.
And for Coda, there's a need for more bus drivers. Jeff Poulin is Coda's media relations manager.
We had about 700 operators before the pandemic, and now we have about 637.
There's hope that now federal pandemic unemployment help has expired, more people will get back into the workforce.
We need about 50 more operators to continue growing our service.
But according to findings from new research released Monday by Policy Matters Ohio, as of July, Ohio had 239,000 fewer jobs than before the pandemic. Michael Shields is a researcher with the nonprofit Policy Research Institute.
A lot of people are still really struggling in Ohio, and policymakers need to keep their eye on that.
Shields says his research shows the pandemic is creating challenges that prevent people from working, particularly women.
That's in part because They were especially concentrated in the industries that laid off a whole lot of folks. But also, a lot of women have had to step back from the workforce to take on more caregiving responsibilities.
According to the latest numbers from the state, as of July 31st, more than 85,000 Ohioans were receiving pandemic emergency unemployment compensation, and more than 200,000 were receiving pandemic unemployment assistance. In Ohio, those programs expired Saturday. In Columbus, Lindsay Mills, 10 TV News.
Ohio's elections chief is highlighting a program that helps protect survivors of domestic violence and other crime. It's an address confidentiality program called Safe at Home. It provides a substitute address, mail forwarding, and confidential voter registration. Secretary of State Frank LaRose spoke this week in conjunction with the group Choices.
And I remember hearing some of these survivors of domestic abuse saying that they had to choose between their personal safety and their right to vote. No one should ever have to make that choice. No one should ever have to choose between their personal safety and their precious right to vote.
You can learn more about how this program works at safeathomeohio.gov. We've posted a link to that at 10tv.com/featured links. This weekend marks a somber anniversary, 20 years since 9/11. Coming up, we'll hear from former 10 TV anchor Jerry Revish, who reported on the attack on America. While the war in Afghanistan is over at last check, some Americans were still in the country. This week, 10 TV spoke with an Upper Arlington woman who was able to come to the U.S. from Afghanistan in the early 90s. She eventually started a family in Central Ohio. While she made it here, she's fighting to help save dozens of her family members who are still trying to escape. Here's 10 TV's Andrew Kinsey.
You know, when the Taliban took over, they couldn't get out of the airport. They would keep going to the airport for a couple of days, and they were shooting there.
Pushtana and her husband were able to leave Afghanistan 2 decades ago. They came to America for an opportunity for a better life. She says they chose Central Ohio because she wanted to provide her family the education she never got. But she says every Afghan deserves that opportunity.
Every person deserves the best in this world, but especially Afghans. They deserve the best because they suffer so much.
Pushtana says watching the terror unfold outside the Kabul airport, she knew she had to help the family still left in Afghanistan.
Like, I can hear the sound of the shooting and everything when I was calling them in the airport, and they were so scared, but they couldn't even get into the gate. They were pushed out.
With nearly 60 family members still in Afghanistan, she did what she could to help 7 escape from the airport in late August. But nearly 50 others are still there.
And people, they tried to hold the airplane to get out of Afghanistan. I don't think I wanted to see my country like that.
After America pulled troops from Afghanistan last month, Pushtana says her family escaped to Jalalabad, a city in Afghanistan.
They have very little to eat, and their life is, not safe there. My nieces, they're so scared. My youngest niece, my brother's daughter, she was so scared. Every time I hear their voices, I cannot go to sleep. I cannot eat. I was like walking zombie for many, many days, and I just cannot imagine the life of Afghans.
She says her focus now is sending money to provide food to her family and calling immigration agencies every day in hopes to help her family escape.
It doesn't matter. We all are the same. We need to speak up for all of them. They all need help. We need help. Everybody deserves the best in this world. No matter who they are, let's be all together and make a peace in my country.
And that was 10 TV's Andrew Kinsey with producer Abby Meyer reporting. Late last week, some commercial flights did start to leave Kabul once again. For many of us, the pictures and pain of September 11th, 2001 feel like yesterday. But this weekend marked 2 decades in the post-9/11 world. We'll never forget the attack on our country and how the United States banded together. The question we always hear, where were you that day? And that was the discussion at the Columbus Metropolitan Club on Wednesday. Former 10 TV anchors, forever friends Jerry Revish and Scott Light were joined by Shirley Brooks Jones for a discussion. She was on her way home from Europe when her flight was diverted. Her story inspired the musical Come From Away. Scott covered the tragedy at the Pentagon, and Jerry traveled to New York City.
We drove for 9 hours to get up to New York City. All the bridges and roads were closed when we got up there. On the way up, we were listening to the radio totally, just listening for every little piece of information that would come. And at first there wasn't a whole lot, but then things were being transmitted to us, being relayed to the folks who were listening to the radio about what had happened here. So we got to town about 11 o'clock that night and didn't have time to set up for anything but a phoner. And as close as we could get was the Hudson River on the other side of Manhattan. But we could see this huge ball of smoke, orange and black and white, different colors, just hanging over lower Manhattan there and just hanging in the air around all of that. And the air smelled like burnt wire. It was just that far away we could still smell that.
The next day, Jerry says they were able to get closer to ground zero.
People would come up to our news vehicle with photographs of their loved ones, and they would ask us if we would put them on TV because they were missing. We didn't have the heart to tell them that this won't be seen here in New York. It's going to be seen in Columbus. So we just shot the pictures anyway and interviewed them.
Jerry says he's hopeful parents will talk about how the country came together during that time, and he hopes future generations focus on the love that was shared that day and the unity in our country. You can watch this entire conversation at 10tv.com/featured links. This week, Ohio remembered a fallen service member who gave his life protecting others. U.S. Navy sailor Maxton Soviak died last month in Afghanistan, and on Wednesday, he returned home. 10 TV was in his hometown as he was honored. Once again, here's Lindsay Mills.
Selfless and driven. Those are the words used to describe Max Soviak by those who knew him. The 22-year-old welcomed home here today.
Max was always that kid, the very, very strong-willed kid.
A flag at half-staff at the village center of Milan, not far from where Max Soviak grew up.
In a small community, this doesn't happen to us very often.
A procession through the village to carry his body home.
We pull together in time of need, and this is a perfect chance right now for everyone here in Ohio to show their respect for the members of the military.
Hundreds of all ages gathered to honor his life.
To see what happened on August 26th was just very heartbreaking. Young men and women gave their lives for their country in a needless act of terrorism.
We need to honor the freedoms that we are able to have and this young man that has lost his life.
It's very heartbreaking. My heart breaks for this family, for all the families of men and women that have lost their lives in Afghanistan, but especially right now because this is so fresh in our mind. And of course, being so close to 9/11, it just kind of connects together another senseless act.
In Milan, Lindsay Mills, 10 TV News.
Max Soviak's funeral is scheduled for tomorrow. For continuing coverage of today's procession, just go to our website at 10tv.com or check our 10 TV News app. Thank you all for being with us today for Face the State. We'll see you back here next Sunday. Take care.